Good evening, Corona Daze Professional Development Group. Again, we are here with Miss Adriana Crawford for her encore performance with us. This is her second time with us. You all gave her a standing ovation the first time and asked that she come back before she even wrapped up the first time. So she's here with us now. I am not going to read her bio. We know her, and for anyone who doesn't, I'll just let Adriana tell us what she'd like us to know. So I am going to turn my camera off and mute myself, and I'm turning it over to you, Ms. Crawford.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. If this is your second time with me, thank you so much for coming back again. I truly hope that you walk away with some really meaningful takeaways that you can implement in your workplace immediately. And if you're new to me, hello. My name is Adriana Crawford. I'm a workforce development expert and consultant. I work primarily with nonprofit organizations looking to firm up their internal strategic procedures. And I also work as a career coach and consultant. So that's what I do. And I don't want to keep going on for way too long. I just want to get right into it. So the title of this training is Navigating Work as an Introvert. And before I go ahead and share my screen and have this pretty snazzy presentation that I put together, I just want to provide a really quick intro as to why this is important. So for one, this is pretty personal to me. I identify as an introvert, although many who may experience me in different settings, corporate settings, networking settings, they may not think that. They may think that I'm pretty social, that I'm a great networker who can connect with people, connect with virtual strangers. But from the outside, and that's what it may look like from the outside looking in. And if you struggle with doing that, believe me, several years ago, I should say, that was not the case for me. Going to a network event was probably one of the scariest things that I could do. As an early professional, when superiors would ask me, hey, listen, I can't make it. Can you serve on this after hours networking event as my proxy? I would say yes, but I was terrified. Why? Because you walk into an event, I don't know anyone, everyone is talking to each other. They all seem to have things in common. They're all laughing and speaking intently with each other about very important things. And I felt helpless and sometimes like I didn't belong. What was I supposed to say? What was I going to do? How could I inject myself among groups of people who look like they already had their own clique going on? And so oftentimes I'd find myself hanging around the periphery of the bar, the restaurant, the catering hall, the hotel room, wherever the event was. And those are just one example, networking events, but that seems to be the one that a lot of people struggle with. And I'd hang around the corners. Maybe I'd smile and say hi to one person. Maybe I'd get a cocktail. Maybe I'd get 2 business cards, and that was kind of it. And in those rooms were people who could help me, help my organization, help my company, but I just didn't know how to break through that barrier. So in the end, there were many opportunities presented to me that I didn't know how to take advantage of. And in the workplace, on the day-to-day, gosh, there were many instances where in bigger meetings, I didn't say a word. I took a lot of diligent notes. There were times where I wanted to interject and say something. I just didn't know how. Or I continued to go over and over in my head about what I would say. Does it sound dumb? They don't want to hear that. They've already heard that before. But by the time I would muster up enough courage to actually say something, the topic would move on to something else or the meeting would be over. And so that went on for quite some time before I had to start really coaching myself and saying, this is not an effective way to make your voice heard, to be seen, and to be recognized for your skills, talents, and abilities. You bring value to this work. You know what you're doing. What can you do to move forward in a really progressive way that gets people excited to hear what you have to say, but also that feels authentic? Because I'm not a person that's naturally the, hey everyone, how's going? What's up? I'm not that person. So how can I be authentically myself as an introvert, but also make meaningful connections? And so that's what we're going to talk about today, how to navigate the workplace as an introvert in an authentic way. So I'm going to share my screen with my presentation, and I may frequently toggle back and forth, but just know that I'm here, I'm still speaking, and we're going to have a question and answer period. So with that said, let me go ahead and all right, so let's start with what it means to navigate work as an introvert. So starting with today's goals, we want to define introversion first, because I think there are a lot of misconceptions about it. We want to understand its importance in the workplace and learn strategies to navigate work. So let's start off first with an activity. So for those of you who are watching now or who may be watching later, I'm going to read through this, and I want you to come to some conclusions on your own. There's not meant to be a specifically right answer. So here it is. Lauren has been working as an accountant for 12 years. 3 months ago, she joined a new company. So far, she has declined to meet up with her team for lunch despite being asked several times, often ends conversations with her colleagues quickly, and spends most of her time at her desk alone or with her customers. She mentions in passing that she doesn't like meetings, that waste time, but she spends diligent time connecting with her customers. Her manager is considering extending her probationary period, citing her disengagement from her colleagues and not being a team player. So I want you to take a moment just to think about that, ruminate on it. Do you see parts of yourself in here? Have you observed maybe a colleague or someone close to you who may have similarities with Lauren? Do you think the manager's or her manager's decision was accurate? Do you think it was the wrong call? Think about that for a moment. Now, what is an introvert? There are a lot of common misconceptions, like shy. An introvert is someone who's shy. They feel uncomfortable around people. They're quiet. They don't have much to say. They're naturally a little bit more tight-lipped. They struggle with communication. Maybe an introvert is unfriendly. They don't really care for people at all. That's why they prefer not to talk to them. Maybe they're antisocial. They'd rather be in the house, doing their own thing, away from everyone else. As far as quarantine is concerned, it was the best thing to ever happen to an introvert. These are a lot of common misconceptions. Let's shift our perspective though. So typically extroverts, and some of you who are watching may identify as an extrovert or may have heard this yourself, extroverts see introverts as unsocial, inadequate, shy, secretive, and aloof. And introverts describe extroverts as aggressive, egotistical, unaware, rude, and socially needy. These are some pretty harsh terms. And depending on if you know people personally who exhibit extrovert tendencies or introvert tendencies, they may seem a little bit unfair. But this is a representation of how you can be perceived to the extreme, whether it's accurate or not. In the workplace, the modern American workplace often caters to those who are more extroverted. So things like open space plans, open floor plans, regular company activities, team building interactives can be uncomfortable for those who are introverted. Also, extroverts are more likely to be promoted, while introverts may be passed over, seen as less driven or engaged. So back to that example around Lauren, she does her work. She focuses on her customers and meeting their needs, but she's being considered for having her probationary period extended because she's not meeting the social meter portion of the job role, even if it may not have been a specific portion of the job role. And this can be a real challenge for those who are more introverted. An open space plan, and if you're unfamiliar with that term, these are the corporate offices. When you think of it, think of like your Google, your modern tech companies, particularly on the West Coast, where they definitely have a similar setup in many companies now. Some companies are shifting to that type of setup because It provides an open, inclusive type of environment. But for those who are more introverted, this can seem like a nightmare. You want me to work at a desk that has no walls, no cubicles. I look across and I can see all of my coworkers, all of my colleagues on the same floor doing their own thing with their own different tchotchkes and pictures and things like that on their desk. And I'm supposed to concentrate like that. That's a lot of stimuli. So let's get down to the definition. An introvert is someone who is typically, so again, it's not a hard and fast rule for every single person, but typically they're introspective, mindful, drawn to meaningful conversations as opposed to small talk, and less likely to engage in long, very social environments. They get their energy from experiences and solace rather than people and social events. And so when I say energy, a lot of you may recognize this feeling of what it means to go out. You're around a lot of people and you're there by choice. Maybe it's a birthday party, maybe it's a wedding, maybe it's just spending time with friends, and you spend the whole day there. You're having a great time, you're having a blast with people that you know and care about. But still, there's a certain point where your social meter, there's an internal clock you have that says, yeah, I'm having a great time, but it's time to go home. And so you do. And when you do, you feel drained, exhausted, even though you didn't do much of anything but eat and talk. That's what we mean by energy. It's the amount of stimuli. It's said that introverts are more sensitive to external stimuli. The amount of stimuli that you've been experiencing, sights, sounds, tastes, people, is at a certain point draining to you. So you need to recharge in your own solitude. Whereas extroverts, it has the opposite effect. Extroverts, when they're home alone, that energy, that social meter, that tank is empty. They need to go out. They need to be around that stimuli to get charged back up. And there's that scientific component. So introverts and extroverts may have different nervous systems, according to Susan Cain, who is one of the leading speakers on introversion, which means that each personality type reacts differently to outside stimuli, which is what I shared. So if we have different nervous systems, if our nervous systems respond differently to different types of external stimuli, then by default, we may be different. We may act differently. We may respond and feel things differently. So it's not that you're antisocial. It's not that you're unfriendly. It's part of your makeup. Now, this can feel almost hopeless. Like, okay, so how does that help me navigate in a networking space? How does that help me really get to really get my boss's attention so I can be considered and ultimately get the promotion that I know that I deserve? Let's get into that really quickly. And I'm not going to be able to go into every specific detail. I have a more exhaustive and comprehensive training that I'll be discussing right after this, but this is a quick overview. So the first one, aim for one-on-one meetings. So in the workplace, there are, and especially now, there can be a ton of, depending on your organizations, a lot of weekly team meetings where you have 5+ people virtually logging in, and everyone, and it's even a little bit more difficult to get a word in because you're behind your computer, you can't quite read social cues, you just see someone's face, or in some instances you don't see their face because they have their camera turned off, and it's difficult, or you may feel that it's difficult to speak up and share your views, share your thoughts, and get your word in otherwise, get a word in edgewise. So aim for one-on-one meetings. Be intentional about building relationships with your colleagues on a one-on-one basis. Introverts have a tendency to thrive in that kind of setup. So for example, let's say you work in human resources, and generally speaking, you only really interact with your colleagues if you have to talk about making sure that they renew their benefits plan, making sure that they sign up for their 401k, things like that. It's very transactional. But let's say that there's a new kind of initiative coming along with accounting that may affect the 401k contribution or something along those lines. Maybe be intentional and reach out to someone over in accounting and say, hey, I know that we were working on this project, and I think it would be great if you and I had a 30-minute chat just to talk about how this intersects with what I'm doing. And in that instance, you can use an opportunity to build your relationship with different departments, with different colleagues, one-on-one. You don't have to get on stage and put on a show for everyone in a large meeting setting, especially that's not the kind of thing that comes naturally to you. There are some people that are naturally a little more jovial, a little more charismatic in those settings. They're the life of the party or the class clown. They can make everyone laugh, and they kind of have that type of personality. And while that may that may make people maybe gravitate towards them initially, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a solid foundation of a good working relationship there. That's where you can thrive, right? So if you have that one-on-one, that quick one-on-one, now you've gotten to know this person. They know more about you when previously they may have thought, okay, this is the person that's just kind of always there, but doesn't say much or is really quiet. But now they have an opportunity to really hear what you have to say, and to hear that, wait a minute, this person is talented. This person is, this person really has a lot of insight. It's a shame that I didn't know this before. The next one, plan ahead. So a big challenge for introverts is when the large meetings come up, they want to be heard. It always seems as if some people, the extroverts most likely, have something to say. And whereas by the time the meeting is over, you haven't said a thing, even though there were several times when you knew you wanted to interject, or you knew that you wanted to share a bit of insight as it pertains to your knowledge. You just didn't get an opportunity to. Plan ahead. Generally speaking, a lot of meetings have some form of an agenda, or you know what's going to be discussed. There's a specific area that you want to discuss. Be sure that it's written down, that you know that you're going to bring this up. When there's a slight pause, say, actually, I wanted to bring this up. I wanted to make sure that we covered our bases here. It doesn't have to start off with a grand proclamation. I know introverts do have a tendency to overthink. It doesn't have to be the statement that wows everyone. Sometimes it's just simply asking for a clarifying statement, or making sure that a certain item is covered or done. These are the baby steps to getting in the flow of speaking in a larger setting, of being more readily able to share your perspective, and not feeling as if there's a lot of pressure to wow someone, or to impress your colleagues and your boss. The next piece is offering to delegate. So for example, let's say at the end of the meeting, you notice, and again, as introverts have a tendency to notice, that no one has talked about next steps. Everyone's has shared a bunch of good ideas, and you've been taking notes, but you've realized, wait a minute, there hasn't been, we don't have a clearly defined plan of action on what we're going to do next here. You can speak up and say that. You can say, really quickly, what are our next steps here? And if everyone's okay with it, I can shoot out an email to everyone, so we can delegate tasks and just reiterate what everyone's doing. And it can be as simple as that. A lot of times introverts are very talented in note-taking and having thoughtful, intentional actions. And you can really thrive in what happens outside of the social setting by, once again, if you're offering to delegate, that will then spark more one-on-one conversations, and it gives you an opportunity to build these connections with your colleagues. And last but not least, practice. So when it comes to, networking is a little bit difficult. In-person networking, I should say, is a bit difficult during these times. But even in a web setting or a webinar setting, practice makes perfect. It starts with just making a single comment and then moving on from there. If you know you have a wicked sense of humor, and you have the kind of a corporate culture where people can make a little joke here and there, you can make one too. Or you can share and get into the flow and habit of saying, you know what, every single meeting I'm going to say something. And as you do it, it becomes more and more comfortable. And you don't have to say something just for the sake of saying it, but you know that you bring value. You know that you know what you're doing. You know that you're talented and that your input will make a positive impact on the work as a whole. So holding back and living in your head by thinking, okay, what are people going to think? It's not going to necessarily help you. And by the time you get done with that thought process of, okay, I've done all this, I've done all the thinking, I'm ready for the perfect statement, you run out of time. So practice makes perfect. And I can't stress enough, even as some of you may, depending on where you are throughout the country or what have you, there are some places that reopen or otherwise. Sometimes it's as simple, even if you are socially distanced within the supermarket, picking up the week's groceries with your mask on. It's as simple as initiating a conversation or a quick statement to a stranger nearby and saying, is this on sale? Or making sure that you're being intentional about getting comfortable speaking to strangers. Um, Unfortunately, this is not the kind of thing that you can just wake up one day and decide to do. Some people opt, especially if we're talking about a more formal networking setting, some people opt to just hang around by the bar and drink until they get the liquid courage to do so. But that's not always the best course of action. The idea, you've got to get comfortable around people. And these are the exact steps that I took to get comfortable speaking to other people, and to also realize, and this is a takeaway that I want you to have as well, is to also realize that a good majority of the people in those events, virtual or otherwise, where a bunch of strangers are in each other's periphery, even if they're talking to one another, they don't know each other. They're just as nervous as you are. They've just gotten into the habit of practicing. It's not here as well, but I should also share this. Whenever we go back to operating in person, and this is a good place to take a note or two. If you're in a setting where there are a bunch of people that you don't know, there is something that someone shared with me that I implemented and it works, which is the rule of 2 or 3. So if you've got a bunch of people paired off in different groups and talking, and they're milling about, the rule of 2 is if 2 people are talking, you can come right on in and be the third. The rule of 3, if 3 people are talking, you can come right in and be the fourth. If it's larger than that, especially as a novice, you don't have to be part of it. So the rule of 2 or 3, you can be the third, you can be the fourth. Because 9 times out of 10, if you come right in and introduce yourself, if someone's got a name tag going on, you can say, hey everyone, how's everyone doing? Where are you from? Here's my name. What brought you here today? And have those general openers. And again, I can get more specific and will be more specific in my training, which is navigating work as an introvert. So if you go to my website, annafordconsulting.com/training, you'll see the training there. And because you're part of this wonderful group, Corona Daze Professional Development, enter code CDPD for money off. So I'm really excited about this. It's scheduled for September 20th at 1:30. So please go ahead and visit, where I'll be getting really into the nitty-gritty of how you can specifically, especially in this world now, in the virtual world, how you can specifically make yourself be seen and heard authentically, because that's the big one. I'm not a fan necessarily of the fake it till you make it, because that's not necessarily sustainable, and people a lot of times can tell when you're not being real. And so generally that doesn't necessarily make folks warm up to you. They can sense if you're bringing your true self. Now, here's how to collaborate. So we've all got to work with each other. Some of us are more reserved. Some of us are more extroverted and social. How do you make that work so that you can all reach the same goal in the workplace? Well, the first one is to listen. You can listen to your extroverted colleagues as they share their different and dynamic ideas, and extroverts, or those who struggle with listening to your introverted colleagues. They may not always speak up right away, which is why you should accept the silence sometimes. A momentary silence after a statement doesn't always mean that they're done speaking. Sometimes it means that they're gathering their next thought. Someone who I think about who really exhibits this speaking style, although I certainly don't think that he's an introvert, maybe he is, I don't know, is someone like President Barack Obama. So he has a very slow and measured way of speaking, where he draws out his sentences, ponders, shares the next thought. And many people would argue that he's one of the best orators that we've had as a president, at the very least in recent history. So take the time to accept that silence before assuming that it has to be filled up with whatever it is that you have to say. Many people listen to respond. They don't listen to understand. So remember that. Use email when possible. So this is really important. Um, a lot of folks who are introverted don't necessarily always want to hop on a phone call or hop on a video call where the camera has to be turned on. That's not always necessary. Sometimes an email will suffice, especially during a time like this when so many of us are overwhelmed with the amount of video meetings that we have to do. And there's actually a scientific component as to why many of us can feel exhausted after a day full of video meetings, more so than if we were in person. And again, that's something that I'll get into my training on the 20th. But where possible, use email. Lastly, well, not lastly, second to last, be mindful. It's important to be mindful just as a general rule of thumb in life, but especially in the workplace, it's important to think through why someone may respond or react in a particular way. It's not always because they're antisocial or they're being egotistical. Sometimes we want to think, okay, well, maybe this is how this person operates. And in a world where we're now really focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion, this is part of the conversation. It's inclusive of race, religion, sexual orientation, and identity, and so on and so forth. But we also have to think about social styles as well. It is not a truly inclusionary or equitable workplace if everything is catered towards individuals who respond to stimuli in one particular way, all right? And lastly, plan. Plan ahead. I mentioned it before, plan ahead for meetings, have an agenda where necessary, plan for what it is that you want to say and what you want the day to look like. Planning helps everyone. And so in connecting to each other, the best way for different personality types to work together is to learn and appreciate different styles, allow room for each person to work in the way that they do best, and ask questions. There's nothing wrong with asking questions. So for example, extroverts may be the first to lead the meeting, while introverts take the time to think through the strategy needed to execute. I think a lot of us know some people either in work or even in our personal lives who are really great fire starters. They're the big idea, the big picture person, but when it comes to execution, not so much. They let other people worry about that. You can be the other person, but you don't always have to hang around in the background. The planning and strategy and execution is just as important. And so for more reading, you can please check out The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking by Susan Cain, who I mentioned earlier. And as a reminder, my training, Navigating Work as an Introvert, you can find at annafordconsulting.com/training. And so that is the end of that. And I really hope to answer some of your questions.
All right, it takes me a minute. All right, let me see what questions we have. Let me do that. And then let me go ahead and see, guys, on Facebook. I don't see anything in the Zoom room.
Okay.
But let's see about on Facebook. Guys, do you have anything for Adriana? What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you guys, I know there's a little lag. If you have any questions or comments for Adriana, please drop them in the comment section. I have 2 questions for Adriana, and I'm going to go with those, and then I'm going to come back to the comments section. Also, for you guys on Zoom, you can post some questions here as well, okay? All right, so Adriana, I have 2 questions. I'm not going to ask you our normal marginalization question because we asked that one before. But I am going to ask you these 2 that I asked you before. So If you think about your younger self when you were starting your journey in the workplace, and then you think about introversion and your journey, what is it that you would have wanted to know about introversion or yourself or anything that you've discovered that would have helped you back then? You know it now, but it would have helped you back then.
Definitely that there was nothing wrong with me. I spent a lot of time, thinking that, okay, well, why can't I just be more like this for this person who so effortlessly connects with other people, who can walk into a room full of strangers and command their attention. And I really thought for a long time that there was just maybe a defect that I had. I was missing something. I was missing some special chip. And by having that thought pattern, and I think a lot of people, just based on clients that I have and even staff that I manage, they do speak about themselves in a very negative way because they're looking at others as a point of comparison for themselves. And the reality is that there's a place for all of us, for the introverts, the extroverts, and those who fall somewhere in between, the ambiverts. If I knew that and accepted that, I believe that it would have helped me a lot sooner to do things my way. Not everything has to be done based on how you observe with other people, but it can be done in your way and it can still be just as impactful, and in some instances, even more.
I love that that you are sharing that with us. I mean, every time you guys come and say something, I'm like, that's why we're here. But I'm glad that you say that there was nothing wrong with you. And I'm hoping that someone, not I'm hoping, I know that someone will hear this, either someone right now who's watching or someone on the replay. And that will be very, very helpful for them as they're on their journey, whether they are a young professional or have been out there for a while and just thinking that, they had some defect, can realize that there is nothing wrong with them. Then let me see if I have anything, because I don't want that to be my final question. So guys, have you left me anything? I always miss stuff. Okay, so let's me go here and see. Okay, so here I love collaboration. This is great information. Not being real will only stress you out. I do live in my head. I seldom speak. All right, so then I have, it was nice to hear someone explain quite a bit about the kind of person I am as an introvert. I felt less so. I felt less as so. Okay. Then that's right. There was nothing wrong with you. A lot of us feel that way. I am getting better though, especially when I hear you share your journey. So yeah, I don't have, guys, you don't have any questions for Adriana. I don't have anything else from you guys. I'm going to ask my question and then I'll come back again and look. Another great time and to come. Okay. So yes, it was another great time for you to come on, Charlene. So I like this to be my last question, but I want to see, I'll jump back into the comments again. Thinking of everything you said, or if you didn't say something, could you give us a takeaway for today? Like if you didn't get anything, I want you to take away.
Absolutely. That being an introvert, identifying as an introvert, one, this is not a source of shame. It's not a disability. It's simply a different way that we approach society and we approach being social. And so by knowing that, there is power in how we go about doing our work. There's value in that, and that you don't have to be overlooked because of how you operate. A lot of people, I mean, statistically speaking, extroverts are promoted more and things like that. And that doesn't have to be a reality forever. And so I want those who feel that way, who know that they are talented, maybe even more talented than the person who's lauded and who has all the accolades and who gets the promotion, that it doesn't have to be that way. They don't have to always hang on the sidelines and be doomed to life where they're overlooked because they're not extrovert, because they're not social and talkative. They are able to do and to make real impacts and to be in leadership positions being themselves. there are some strategies that they can use. And I hope that those who are watching and will watch use those takeaways. But ultimately, it's not a dead end. It's not a handicap. It's not your future or your fate is not written because of the way that you are. So that's a huge takeaway. There's another point that I also started thinking about that I also want to share. So it's not necessarily related to this question, but I want to share this because one of the trainings I did, someone brought up that from a cultural perspective and from a social perspective and how people were raised and brought up, that, for example, those who are African American, Black, raised in a particular cultural environment were taught that you don't make friends at work, that work is work and home is home. So there's no going out for happy hour. There's no hanging out for lunch. You keep your business to yourself. And to another extent, there are some people who mentioned who work in male-dominated environments, but as a woman, that there's a certain level of discomfort that she had with sometimes having those kinds of interactions and potentially having it misconstrued, I should say, as being too buddy-buddy with men, or potentially feeling just simply uncomfortable because in a male-dominated environment, there's just certain things that are said, that are done, that make them uncomfortable. So I want to address that, and I didn't touch on it in this training, but it's something that sparked in my mind, and I think that our listeners will resonate with this. So on the cultural bit, yes, I totally understand that. In fact, I was actually taught you leave, your colleagues are not your friends. Work is work and home is home, and that's correct. I've heard some people go so far as to say, I don't need to be friendly at work. I don't need to, work is no place to be social. And what I want to do, and this may be a little bit controversial, is I want to challenge that, because ultimately, if you look at it from a percentage, you spend 40 hours a week at work. That is, and there's only 24 hours in a day, 7 to 8 of which ideally you spend sleeping. So right away, that's 8 hours, that's a third of your day that you're spent working, and that's if you're working under the best of circumstances. Most of us don't have a commute, so either way, you spend minimum 1/3 of your day at work. That's a third of your week. Let's not even consider for those when we go back to the office, commute times and everything else. I don't believe that you should have necessarily best friends at work that you tell all your business to, unless, in some instances you do have someone that you're very close with and that builds over time, because that happens.
Yeah.
But if you spend a significant amount of time with people and you, in a sense, have a chip on your shoulder or a stiff arm towards them, and you express no interest whatsoever in connecting with them outside of pure work, you will always struggle.
Yeah.
And that is the fact of the matter. You're going to struggle because ultimately, and this is one of the things that I say very often in coaching and training to my team, people are more likely to work with you if you don't have the technical skills, but you have the personality that makes you someone that they want to work with. You have to be someone that people want to work with. We spend too much time together for us to not be. So that's a huge takeaway that I feel is important to say, especially with the cultural component. And as it pertains to someone working in a male-dominated industry, the inverse I've seen as well. I mean, having worked in social services, it's heavily female-dominated, and occasionally there's a man as well. It's not necessarily the same kind of discomfort. What I say is I always advise a woman, if there's a level of discomfort or anything like that, to CYA, reach out to human resources, and just make sure that, listen, someone said something that was slightly uncomfortable to me, you want to get that on file right away. There's no point trying to play nice or make excuses. It doesn't help anyone. So maybe that'll be another training. But that's the one thing that I wanted to say as well. So
I appreciate that. I agree. I always say that, and we have some stuff I'm going to get to in a second, that we spend more hours awake at work than we do at home. Even with our weekends, whether you sleep away your weekend or you're running around doing errands, that if you do the math, you're more awake, more hours awake at work.
Yep.
But a lot of my former staff are on here now, and I say we don't have friends in the workplace, so we need to be friendly.
Mhm.
And this is particularly, I had a job where we slept a lot together. Like we traveled a lot. The teams traveled a lot, and for weeks on end, and those lines get very blurred. And so they will, if I say here, become friendly with your coworkers, they will pull my card. Okay. But we do need to be friendly, but there's a line. I want to say that there's a line, everyone. As Adriana said, your best friends and I at work, you're not, best friending everyone, but we do need to be a little more than cordial in the workplace. I think we need to be a little more than cordial. And then for the cultural stuff, when I was coming up, I'm a little older than you. I was told that you should never drink with your coworkers.
Mm-hmm.
And that worked well when I worked in government. If I went to happy hour, it was with my real work friends, the people who you were really very friendly with. Then I got into a corporate environment and liquor was in the workplace. And I did not drink. I would not drink because I was told you don't drink at work. And then I heard someone say, this guy, he didn't drink. He's probably dealing with alcoholism. I started drinking at work, guys. Okay, I started taking a drink. So, I was like, did someone say that about me? Someone said, I said, yeah, we can go for coffee. They were like, well, do you drink, Jeanette? So there are these cultural norms in the workplace that I kind of say we have to watch them, like observe them and figure out what do you jump into, what do you, and how deep, how much of your toe you stick in there. But all right, I appreciate that. I appreciate all of that. And yes, you will come back again. So thank you for giving us our next topic. And then everyone, I just want you to know that I asked Adriana to come right back. I asked her to come right back. Even my therapist, everyone knows I'm in therapy. Even my therapist watched you on YouTube and wanted you to come back. So, okay. All right. So, but guys, what I was saying is, I digress. I asked Adriana to come back on this topic. I know that she makes money off of this, and I tell everybody, don't give us what you make money off of, but I wanted this one. So, so our consolation is, yes, Adriana makes money off of it. We have no money to pay her, but if you guys are interested, please, by all means, go ahead and sign up for her workshop, but you're under no obligation, but okay. All right. So let's see what else we have here. So you're right. Wait, Adriana, how do you keep yourself motivated?
Motivated just in general, or, well, I'll answer both since I don't know if they're actively listening. So motivation in general, I keep my whys at the forefront. So what is my intention for the day? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this work? How does this work connect to me and to who I am? I've gotten into the recent habit of setting an intention for the day. So right when I wake up in the morning, I set an intention, I actually write it down. And it keeps me accountable to myself. Like today, this is what my focus is. I'm going to make sure that I finish these tasks, but also outside of work, I'm also going to make sure that I get a pedicure. I'm going to make sure that I cook dinner or so something along those lines, right? Because I want to make sure that I have a balanced approach to my life, and it can't all sway in one way or another. But if I had to distill it, it's definitely keeping my why at the forefront, always doing self-checks and making sure that what I do is in connection with who I am and in alignment with who I am, and setting that intention for the day, every day, weekends included.
I love it. All right. You're right. And if you don't socialize, you can't network. Hey, that's right. If you don't socialize, you cannot network. I love that, Rhonda. Charlene says, I get a lot of butterflies that prevent me from wanting to speak sometimes, and too much talking annoys me also. I think that has something to do with that energy you were talking about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of times, especially when it's the small talk, I mean, there are some people that seem like they talk for the sake of just filling in the silence. So it's just chatting for no just chatting, right? And so it can be very it can be kind of a source of ire, especially if you have to really work with this person. And so the best way that I found to navigate that is, I mean, now I've been doing this for quite some time now, so I have no problem interjecting at a certain point and being like, you know what, hold that thought, because I want to make sure that we get to this point. Like I have no problem interrupting people.
I have no problem interrupting people. I love it. Go ahead. I'm
It's
sorry.
just, yeah, because that the internal dialogue of like, okay, you know what, I feel myself tuning out. And at this point, I'm not going to nod and smile. Now, granted, there's a certain in some sense, a hierarchy. So if it's like, the CEO, thankfully, my company CEO isn't like that. But in some instances, a superior or someone like that, if I'm not connecting and they're just talking and talking and it's not really resonating with me, even then I may say, if I may, I just want to make sure, since I took a look at the time, I'm really big on time as well. Like I will say something in reference to the time. I'm taking a look at the time here and I want to make sure that everyone's voice is heard. So if we can, just I do that and it does help. But again, that takes practice. It definitely takes practice. The butterflies in the stomach. Sometimes even I still experience that. I went to a pretty large conference several months ago, probably right before, not too long before everyone just kind of had to lock down. And it was right in Washington D.C. Ton of people around. I went solo, and it was definitely one of those. It was an exercise in my ability to network, being totally by myself. But at the end of the conference, I ended up being invited to. Uh, I was representing DC, but because my company has a large presence in New York, and I kind of shared a few things here and there. I actually spoke in the large plenary session to the deputy administrator of the Department of Labor. I asked several questions. I was very intentional because I specifically wanted my name to be heard. I wanted people to turn around and look at me so they could know, okay, this is that person who asked that question. And so by the end of the session, by the end of the couple of days, I was invited to speak to the delegate and actually one of the congresswomen to talk about training for New York, because I happened to be from New York City and knew the area. So those are, and again, from the outside looking in, someone may say, actually someone did say, yeah, I wanted to know who this person was. You're a real go-getter. And I mean, to a certain extent, yes, I am. And I do want to position myself in certain ways, but it's just like, listen, if you knew me several years ago, you would not have even known my name. You wouldn't even remembered my face. It takes practice.
Practice, guys, practice.
Yeah.
Janae, sorry, Jay, says, Janae Walker says, I identify as introverted, but I'm super shy. If I'm not presenting or on stage, I just want to blend in with the crowd. But to people, it seems like I'm two opposite ends of the spectrum. How do I explain it to people that I have moments when I'm just very low key? I don't want people to think I don't like them.
Just like that, Janae, you and I have something in common. I have a performance background. So as a child, I did dance, I did ballet, jazz, hip hop. So when I was on stage, the show was on and I was the star of the show, and I had no problem performing in front of people. I did theater, I did musicals, everything else. When it came to the time to impress in a different setting, it was hard for me. There were many instances where people told me, I kind of thought you were stuck up. Like I thought that you were just quiet, that you didn't like people. And I had a hard time, especially my early 20s, I would say, I had a hard time communicating what it was, because I wasn't able to articulate it even myself. But now, fast forward, Janae, you know yourself. You know that if you're speaking in front of people, I also love public speaking. If you're speaking in front of people, you do it well. If you're performing, you're doing it well. But sometimes you have those moments when you're more low key. And ultimately, it's not for someone else to justify or validate you. So you never let someone explain you to you. You know who you are, right? So you can communicate very simply and matter of factly, Yeah, listen, I know I love speaking, but I'm a bit of a contradiction. It's kind of funny. I like public speaking. I like being out front, but a lot of times I like staying with myself in my own company. But trust me, I'll always let you know what mood I'm in, depending on what day of the week it is. Just leave it at that. And if you're talking about friends or even family, um, you know, they will get it. If it's corporate culture, I mean, you can still explain it in maybe a slightly different way, but ultimately the communication or the lack of communication is what contributes more to misunderstanding and assumptions.
Yeah.
The presence of communication is what helps address that.
Yes. Okay, let's see. Um, uh, I just try to keep a smile on my face to keep it warm, says Charlene. Rhonda says, yes, setting an intention, thank you. And Janae says, that's me. My bachelor's is in theater. So you guys need to connect.
Absolutely.
You both need to connect. All right, I have one. And the guys, if you have anything, drop it really quickly. I have one. Well, kind of two. To kind of piggyback. You said you went to that conference alone. So do you have or have you found that in the workplace you find like a work buddy or a work colleague who is different than you are? And does that work for you? That might be a little more extroverted or ambivert, and so then that helps you. Is that a strategy, or could that be a strategy?
I would say yes, to a certain extent. So the very first person who really pushed me was a former boss who was definitely an extroverted guy, and I would also add that it was helpful to have a male kind of coach me and tell me what it was matter of factly, because men do have a tendency to be much more direct. And so he said, listen, like, you're very smart, because this is my boss. He saw my work, he saw what I did, but he said, you don't speak up, you don't say anything. And it gives the impression in a larger setting that you don't have anything to say. And I know that you do. And so I took his cues. I listened to what he said and how he said it. And after a while, I kind of started to mimic it in ways that felt more natural to me. Before I was able to put my own spin on it. So it definitely helps. And generally, I do have a tendency to gravitate more towards extroverted personalities, personally and professionally. But even now, when I think about it, it's a good balance. I will say, though, that I do not have super introverted. I wouldn't consider myself super introverted, but I don't have super introverted friendships or work colleague relationships. I do tend to gravitate towards those who are more out there.
Okay. That actually was my question too. Like, and then the second piece, when I was like, it piggybacks in your personal life, you see that you are attracted to more. Okay, so can you please repeat what you said about your whys?
Sure. So what keeps me motivated is keeping my why at the forefront, right? So I need to make sure, and I do these checks with myself on a regular basis, that my why for working, my why for taking on this activity, my why for having a conversation with a friend or choosing to go out with this friend, that is in alignment with who I am. And it can sound kind of snazzy and new agey, and for some, but sometimes it's actually a little bit more difficult than you may realize, because a lot of people experience so much externally and hear a lot of different opinions that they lose sight of who they actually are. But everyone deep down kind of knows, right? Because if it doesn't sit right with you initially, Jamaicans have a saying that if your spirit doesn't take to it, then you know that it's not quite right for you. So the why for me is, I'm getting up and doing this work because I believe in the work that I'm doing. I know that I'm making a positive impact. I care about uh, the people that I serve. I'm doing this because I care about the people that are watching this. I care about the success of those who want to soar within the workplace and within different settings. It has to resonate with me. It has to feel right. That is my why, and that's what keeps me motivated. So, I mean, transparency, I had a very, very kind of busy, long, tiring week. I'm personally very exhausted and underslept, but it wouldn't cross my mind to not do something like this, because my why is very clear. It's important for me to get this info. It's important for me that people get this information and hopefully walk away with something that they feel resonates with them, that they can start using immediately, so they can have better more thrilling and thriving lives inside and outside of the workplace.
I love it. Okay. So I think that might be it. Nothing in Zoom. Okay. But now I love this, and I hate that I can't write when you talk. I just am so glued to you when you talk, Adriana. It's your voice, it's your delivery, it's just your authenticity. Yeah, so I have to rewatch this quite a few times before I get my quotes, guys. So you won't have any quotes tonight from Adriana posted in the group. Again, you are welcome to come back whenever you'd like. And I will reach out to you probably every month and say, you want to come back? Because everyone loves you. We really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yes. And let me see. And see. And okay, so from Adrian, I have introverts are observant. We pick up on nuances that are missed by extroverts.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think I'm more of an ambivert, but I definitely tell people. I was just telling someone the other day, recently, and somebody might even say, I said, I talk a lot, but I notice everything. So some of us ambiverts do that. That's what it is, right? Ambivert?
Yes. Yeah.
That's me. Yeah. True. I never thought of that. That's what Rhonda says. I guess she's saying true to Adrian. So, Adriana, we love you, and we always want you to come back. You're a friend of CDPD. In any way that I can support you, let me know. Please either send me your flyer or post it in the group. Like you guys, we don't sell in the group. And when I say we don't sell in the group, it means we don't, you join a group and someone's always harassing you to buy something in your inbox. But I say to everyone, please let us know what you're doing. We want to support you. There's someone in the group who not only wants to support you, but has the resources too. There are a bunch of people who would want to support and probably don't have it, but there are also other people in the group who have the resources and want to support you. So please, and that goes to everyone listening and everyone in the Zoom, post what you do, post how we can contact you and how we can support you. Just do not harass people in their inboxes selling them things, okay? All right, and I thank you again. This will be up on YouTube this evening, okay?
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. Bye.